Hello, and welcome to Your Average Bear Gaming. I'm George. Today I'm super excited, I don't know if you can tell, to share with you how I quick painted my very first Troops Choice Kill Team from the Octarius Kill Team box. This was the Death Core of Krieg Kill Team. They were super cool. I loved building these, I loved painting these, and if you don't mind me saying so, I think they turned out pretty good. So, let's get started. Here is my Death Core of Krieg. I've given them a prime with this stuff. It's Krylon Camouflage. It's a specialty primer. It's very, very flat. I've been using it a lot for my troops that have kind of a earth tone. It works really well, but I'm at the end of this can just about, and I have not been able to find a replacement. This is nowhere in stock, and I'm pretty sad about that. So, rip this can. But I couldn't think of a better place to use the last of it than on these troops. These guys are absolutely beautiful. Seriously, the posing, the level of detail, just everything about these models it's absolutely beautiful. I have no words to describe how awesome looking these models are. Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for words. As I started putting this together, I started realizing, man, this is going to be a special kit. And it's up there in terms of the sculpt quality, everything about it is just phenomenal. I cannot recommend owning this kit any more than I'm recommending it right now. It's just a beautiful kit. If you have Astra Militarum, you want these in your collection. There's just no two ways about it. So whether you get the Octarius kit for Kill Team or you buy them for your Astra Militarum for 40k, whatever the case is, this new sculpt, I would absolutely add this to my collection. Having said all this positive stuff about this model kit, I will point out a couple of things that you might have issues with. So the first of the issues I should point out is that it's kind of a finicky kit. There's a lot of little pieces for each model, and for some of these, like these, where the arms and weapons are connected, it's going to be a little finicky to get everything in place. In fact, I had to break out the tweezers to cement the arm in place once one arm and the gun was in place. That's actually why I've primed the model together, because in the past I've had a really tough time getting the arms on the model non-destructively once I've already painted it. So it's going to be a harder painting project because I've had to put the arms together on the torso. It's not something I normally would do, but these are finicky models. So it's you're going to have to compromise somewhere, and that's where I chose mine. The other thing that I would want to point out is that there's a lot of mold lines on these models. It's almost unacceptable. I know Games Workshop can do better because they have done better. There's plenty of model kits of the newer variety that Games Workshop have released that don't have a ton of mold lines. Almost every piece had a bunch of mold lines I had to scrape off, and some of them were in spots where you really couldn't scrape them off and sand them off because they were like on a curved part. It's almost like they didn't care. They didn't take a path for quality control in that aspect. I don't know. It's sad. It's disappointing. You can work your way around it, but you're always going to be able to see some of these mold lines. Unless they're really, really good at taking these off, which, congratulations. But I think most of us with moderate to low skill levels, we're going to have some issues with these. The other thing that I want to point out is that there's such a variety to this model kit. It's going to take you longer than you think to put these together. It took me a couple of hours, where normally putting Imperial Guard together takes me, 30 minutes or so, maybe an hour, depending on the complexity of the model kit. So this is going to take you a little while. You're also going to find that the contact points are fairly small, so the legs and the base are going to have they're not going to want to stick together very well. It's kind of the curse for all small models like this, but some of these models, like this one, they have even smaller point of contact between the model and the base, so you're going to have to be patient with all of that. Another thing that you probably want to keep in mind is that you will not be able to build all the varieties of the model. So in the instruction manual, there's a set of instructions, and for many of the model types, so for many torso and leg combinations, you can pick one of 3 sets of arms, or sometimes 2 sets of arms. And so sometimes the arms has like a plasma pistol, but sometimes it's a comms guy, sometimes it's a medic. And so when it's all said and done, you won't be able to build every single kind of operative that you want, and that's what they're called, I guess, in Kill Team. You're going to have to pick and choose, and so if you build one type of unit, you won't be able to build the other type. So you're going to have to make some compromises, which is kind of sad, but I get it. You're not going to be able to provide the bits for every single variation. As it stands, I still have lots and lots of bits left over after building this kit. Like I couldn't build a demo guy because I wanted a medic. And as a matter of fact, sometimes even if you follow all the instructions, you're going to run out of a certain kind of arm, and you're going to have to go back and figure something out. So as a case in point, this guy, I just wanted to build a normal trooper. In fact, he was the last one in this kit. So he was going to be holding a las gun, kind of like this guy. But I didn't have this arm. This was like number 43 or whatever. That's the arm that went to this body and gun combination. But there was 2 of that in the kit, and I already used both in some of this other build. So I didn't have an arm number 43. And none of the other arms would do the trick. The way the gun was positioned, this arm wouldn't connect if I used another kind of arm. So I had to redo it, and it came out okay. So he's hurling a grenade, and he's resting this gun on his left. That's fine. I was able to figure something out. It's just something to keep in mind. You're going to have to stay on your toes when you're building these models. You're going to have to make some choices. But at the end of that build process and all the choices and all the scraping and sanding, you're going to end up with probably the coolest Astra Militarum models I've ever seen. So now that they're primed, I have to make some choices about how I want them to look. And I've looked online. There's a lot of these are blue, but there's a couple of other variations. And for some reason, I want these guys to have leather coats. So the long coat is kind of a prominent feature of this model, and I don't know. I want this to be leather colored. So that's going to be the idea. And I'm going to have to be careful because everything is already glued together, so it's going to be a tight fit for many of these things. But I'm going to give it a shot. I want to make the trench coat, or the long coat, I want to make it leather colored, which begs the question, of course, and I don't know if beg the question is the right way of saying that, but it's the next question, I guess, is what do I do about the other parts of the armor? The legs, the boots. Well, the boots can be the same leather color as the coat. I think that's fine. But what about the legs and the equipment? That's a good question. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure that out. But I think I'm going to start where all good projects start, with paint selection. So I've got a couple of different colors of brown in my collection of brown paints, and I don't think I want to go too dark because I want to let the wash do the darkening for me. So I'm not going to go with that. So it's kind of between these three. And I have to also keep in mind that there's going to be lots of leather pouches and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to go with this fur brown, because it's a lighter brown. I can darken up, but it's also got this red value happening for it, which I think might look good, like a reddish brown. Well, I wasn't sure about this color when I put it on my palette, and it looks okay, but it's really not the color I was hoping to get. And so once I got the washes on there, yeah, I think I'm going to try again with a different color brown. I'm going to go with a more traditional leather brown. I just don't like the look of that specific color on there. I did decide on that army green for the pants, and I do like the way that looks. I gave it a wash of this shader I hadn't tried. It's from Army Painter, also military shader. It's a darker green than the green tone, and I like the way it looks. So all I've got to do is go back and redo the base coat on that leather brown, and then once it dries I'll hit it with a wash, and it should be the color that I want. And this is why, trying to do color, I wanted to see if I could get to like it, and I didn't, and that's fine. Sometimes you got to experiment a bit. It's part of the learning process. So here he is with his new colors, and I like the way it looks. So just a recap for the pants, I went with army green shaded with this stuff, right? So obviously it's a glaze of army green. It's a pretty thick, it's a heavy glaze. I guess that's what people would call that. And so you'll notice how the green goes on there, but there's plenty of the prime showing through. It's almost like the green is just kind of lightly coating it, and I like the way that looks. It makes the undercoat that's showing, it makes it look like highlights, and then the shader goes in and acts as shadows, and so all that work is done without me having to do anything manually. My favorite way of doing things. So for the long coat, I went with this guy. It's leather brown with a strong tone wash, and so it did the same thing to that. And then for the inside of the long coat, I went with skeleton bone, basically an off-white, and then with the same kind of shade. What I will say is maybe for the inside of the coat, it might be a little too dark. I think maybe I need to switch up the shader. I'll maybe use something like soft tone right here, because it's a little on the darker side. I kind of want it a little lighter. So I'll repaint this and then reshade it, and then I'll do the same to the rest of these boyos, and then we'll come back for the other parts. So here are my Death Corps of Krieg models. They've all been base coated with relatively heavy glazes of a couple of different colors. We have that green we talked about for the pants and the cloth elements. I also did the face masks in that same color, kind of with the idea of communicating that it's basically an entire connected undergarment. It goes into the gloves. That way they're all environmentally sealed. I think these guys operate in toxic environments, so they have an environmental containment suit. So that's the idea there. The long coat is painted with the leather brown, and the inside of said coat is the skeleton bone, so it's like the lightest shade of brown, or it's an off-white, to kind of contrast with the coat and the rest of the outfit. The boots are also painted in that leather color. I went pretty leather heavy with this model. I don't know, I kind of liked the idea of having a primarily leather-clad unit. That was pretty cool. Same thing could be said here for the backpacks. A lot of them have a backpack kind of like this. Actually, this one's special. This is for the medic. And so the backpack itself is leather, and it has a couple of little metal attachments. I went with black for all the metal. Now, this isn't straight black. This is actually a very dark gray. It is Necromancer Cloak. And the reason I went with this Necromancer Gray as opposed to pure black is because I want the subsequent shading to go in there and give me a bunch of shadows in it, so I don't have to do that by hand. And so my color choices were informed primarily by my painting style. Everything that I put on here is going to be darkened up a notch or two. And so I wanted to make sure they look good after the wash, so you have to kind of plan for that during the basing. You'll notice that the long coat also has these little details. It's like a little pocket flap. I went ahead and made them a different color just to help them stand out a bit. You'll notice the cuffs are also like that. It's kind of like they're rolled back. So I went with that wherever I saw these little pocket flaps. And so they're all basically like that. The weapons are all also black. And that's basically all she wrote for the base coat. Here's the other style of backpack. You'll notice there's a couple of leather compartments, little bags, and there is a green. It looks like a tarp or like a blanket they can sleep on. And so I went with the same color as their undergarment. I just figured, yeah, I wanted to separate them out from the leather, but I also wanted to pick a color that I've been using already. And there's also some little containers here, and so I went with my black for metal. And that's it. That's all of the models are basically like this. Here's the Sergeant. He follows kind of the same pattern. You'll notice that this this rebreather unit is also black, like it's going to be metallic, for the same reasons that I went with black everywhere else. I think he looks pretty neat. And the only one that's substantially different is this guy. He's my flamer guy. And so the flamer guy has the obligatory red tanks for his flamer fuel supply. I think that's a really nice contrast. He's the only model with any red on him. I think it looks pretty cool. And so now I'm ready for the very next step. So right now they look okay. They're pretty bland, but this isn't where my quick painting technique ends. This is really just the beginning of my quick painting technique. Although to do a decent job base coating the model, it takes some time. So it's almost like I spent the most amount of time with this model getting the base coat right. So the next step is to make this base coat shine. And to do that, I employ washes from the Army Painter line. These are quick shade washes. And I'm just going to apply a liberal amount of this wash. This is the military shader wash that I've used before. And so all the green parts are going to get this wash. It'll give me some really nice shadows. It'll contrast with some highlights on this model. It's a very nice, quick and easy way of getting some cool effects on the model. a single coat of that military shader, this stuff has transformed these pants that face mask the gloves into recognizable things. Just look at the details on the backpack. That's just that's stuff that we don't have to pick out. I mean, we can if we want, but there's a lot of those little details that you just wouldn't paint, and so now you can see them just by, what is it, fluid mechanics? Is that chemistry or physics? I don't know, but it makes a painter's life so much easier. All right, so now that the wash on the green stuff has been taken care of, I'm going to go back in with some strong tone and hit the leather brown stuff with it. I think I'm going to avoid using this shader on the skeleton bone because it's a little on the too dark side. So I'm going to stick with this shader for the outer portions, all the leathery stuff. And the skeleton bone parts, I'm going to use a different kind of shader. I'm also going to hit this backpack with its same strong tone, so it looks just like the other leather components on this model. Again, it's a great way of getting those little details up, like the flap on the pouches, the straps, the buttons on the uniform. Yeah, it's a great way of doing this. Oh, I forgot the boots. These guys are really coming together. I really like the way the leather dried on there. It makes it look shiny. Pretty leather-like to my eyes anyway. The next shader I'm going to apply is the soft tone. That's going to go on the exposed bone white parts. That's the inside of the long coat. The only thing that I won't do, so it'll be these pieces right here and the cuffs. So there's not a lot of areas to paint with that. On these long coats though, I will do something a little different. So you'll notice that in some cases you can see the inside of that color way back there. So I could just do the same thing that I did here, but back there it'll be in deep shadow. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different shader for that. I'm going to go with a dark tone. It's the darkest wash that they have, so it'll look darker than this stuff that's out here out in the sun. I think that's going to be a way of representing kind of deeper shadows on this model without complicating things all that too much. So I'm using this soft tone as opposed to the other strong tone that I use for the leather, because I don't want it to be too dark. So I want the shadows to show up, but I don't want it to be overly dark. And with a test model, the strong tone was just kind of overpowered the bone white, and it gave it a kind of a different feel than I wanted. So I learned my lesson from the test model, and we'll apply it to all the rest of these, and we're getting kind of close to the end. I'm liking the way these are turning out so far. Been saving this guy for last because this is what's going to make our dark gray look like black. So again, since we rely on our washes so much to provide the shadows, you really can't shadow something that's black, but you can shadow something that's dark gray. There'll be a very subtle contrast between the dark gray and the shadows provided by this dark tone. So that's how we're going to wash all of the metal parts that are this gun, the helmet, the shoulder pads, and any other little metallic details like this. We'll use a dark tone to make our blacks, or to make our dark grays look black, saving us the trouble of adding shadows and highlights manually, because who's got time to do that? So the shading is almost entirely done, or the washing, and it looks pretty neat. I really like the way that looks. There's nice variety in the black color, and it really does look more black than it did originally, along with all that variation in the tones on each of the items. I'm pretty happy with the results. There's only one last thing I have to do in terms of applying washes, and then we're done with that part of the build, and that is this odd man out. He's got the tanks, the flamer tank. So I'm gonna all these two red pieces. So there's a tank underneath the gun and the tank on his back. I'm gonna give it a red wash just to make sure that we have some highlights. And once we're done with that, we'll move into the next step of this project. The next step here is to start adding in some of the details. Now, with this quick painting style that I use, there's not a ton of details that we got to pick out, but there are a couple that you want to bring out, and some are less optional than others. So one of the less optional ones, at least so far as I'm concerned, is the eyes. You want to dot the eyes. You want to make sure those masks look nice and scary. Now, I could go with the usual red eyes, but I think I'm going to try, like shiny eyes, like shades, like sunglasses, right? The shiny mirrored type. So to pull that off, I've thinned out a little bit of matte black paint, and I've thinned it just with a little bit of flow improver. And I go in there and I dot the eyes. It's not really a brush stroke, it's just kind of a touch. Once that dries, I'll go back with like a really bright metallic silver, and I will go over that, but undercoating them first with black, make sure that the silver will be nice and shiny. Another detail that I want to add is the usual plasma glowy effect for plasma guns, but that always starts off with an undercoat of white. Once that dries, I'm going to go in with a little bit of really light blue, kind of a thin glaze, almost a wash, so that it has the glowy from the undercoat of white. It's usually a nice effect. This next detail is completely optional, and it's probably more trouble than it's worth, but I don't know. When I saw it, I thought, oh, I want to try it. It's these little straps on the backpacks. It's holding their bedrolls together, and I want to mark them out as leather straps. Yeah, I don't know that it's worth it. It's kind of a high difficulty, depending on your skill level, obviously, right? You need a steady hand and a bit of an overbrush technique. It looks neat. I don't know if it's worth the extra effort, but I'm going to try it just because, you know what, I'm almost done with this project and I've really enjoyed it. I'm going to spruce this up just a little bit more, just to give it a little extra oomph. Maybe I'll do these two. Nearing the end of this project, and these guys look pretty good. I cannot complain. I think I have one last step to take on these models. Well, really, before I start building the accessories, I have to check the kit to see the accessories that it has. I might want to add some of those. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I won't even take a look until I finish this step. So the next step is to give these black parts a little bit of a dry brush. So they're already nice and shiny. They look like black metal, but I want to give them a nice little something extra. So I've got some shining silver, which is the brightest silver metallic that I have. And I'm just going to lightly go over the weapons with it. And it'll give it a nice metallic sheen. Same thing with the shoulders, the helmet, and any other little black metallic bits like that. Yeah, it's a nice shiny metallic, but it retains the black color. I think that looks snazzy. Here are my Death Corps of Krieg. They're all painted up, based, and they've got a little bit of matte varnish over them to protect this paint job. Now, if any of you have watched a previous video of mine, you know that I'm pretty hard on my painting and the results of my models. So this may come as a shock, but I'm really happy with the way these turned out. They are really freaking cool. I think this is probably the best paint job I've done so far, which, you know, by YouTube standards isn't saying a lot because there's a lot of really good painters out there, but I am just super happy with how my Krieg boys turned out. They look really cool. It's a really simple paint job and it's really quick. Just base coat glaze, some washing, some dry brushing, a little bit of layering, and it's done. There is no intentional adding of shadows or adding of highlights. Everything is done by washing, glazing, and a little bit of dry brush here and there. And it looks really cool, I think. This kit has an incredible variety of options for your troops. In fact, out of this squad of 10, there is only one basic trooper. Where is he? He's this guy. He's the only basic trooper that I've got in this kill team. The rest of them, like here's the sergeant, here's the hardened veteran. The thing that impressed me the most about this particular model, look at that left arm. So the hand is a mechanical hand, but if you look at the arm around where the elbow is, you could see the coat, the long coat, the sleeve of it kind of wrapping around the mechanical arm. It's a detail I hadn't ever seen on a Games Workshop model. That looks absolutely brilliant. Kudos to whoever designed that. It is amazing. So I've got the hardened veteran. I've got a couple of gunners, one with a grenade launcher. I've got one with a flame. I've got this guy with the the plasma. I didn't use the melta because I don't think in Kill Team you're going to have an opportunity to use a lot of meltas. Got the sniper right here. I've got a medic. I've got this really menacing mofo with this club thing, the maul that he's got to bring some pain to somebody's day. He's also a special guy. He's like a, I don't know, veteran, like a veteran ruffian or something like that. Okay, I lied. This is another trooper. So I've got two troopers. So most of my kill team is made up of special operatives, which is fine. And if I ever try to get these on, you know, in a Warhammer 40k game. You know, they probably won't be acceptable as is, and that's fine. These are just Kill Teamy, and they're deliciously detailed. They're varied. There's so much going on. That extra time I spent on the backpacks, it's just a tiny little touch, but it looks so cool. I love it. I love it. I love the color selection. I even went in and put in those little extra pouches with the grenades and the spare clips. Almost every one of my dudes has one. I even love this flamer tank. But the thing I think I love the most about these models is look at that helmet. So it looks like a black helmet, but it also looks shiny, like it's a metallic black, when in fact there is no metallic paint used. It's just dark gray paint as a glaze, and I use a dark wash over that, and then a silver dry brush, and it looks like it's a metal helmet that was painted black and then has aged a bit, and so it has that sheen. Same thing with the pauldrons and the guns, even the tanks. Anything that's metallic has that little sheen of metal. That's probably my favorite aspect of this entire project, and it's a lesson I'm going to apply to future models. Like I wonder what my Death Guard army, not my Death Guard, my Death Watch army would look like if it had that kind of black as opposed to the black that I actually gave them. I think that would be really, really cool looking. As is becoming the standard with my squad sergeants, he's got a pack of grenades on his pauldron for easy access. I even added that little plasma glow on his plasma pistol. I don't know that there's anything about this project that I didn't like. I enjoyed the building. I enjoyed the painting. I'm just super happy with it. Enough gushing. So we talked about the lessons learned. We talked about the black paint. Another thing I learned is that it isn't as hard as I feared to paint without sub-assemblies. I usually paint the bodies separate from the arms and attach everything later. I have found in this project, this is the first time I really tried it, and actually tried as opposed to just kind of messed around, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I mean, it wasn't as easy as just painting them in sub-assemblies. That's absolutely easier, but it wasn't as hard as I thought to just paint them all when they're together, and it makes the assembly a lot cleaner. It's easier to use plastic glue and attach everything together than it is to go in once they're painted and try to super glue everything together. That's a much harder task, I feel. So that's something I learned about, and I'm going to try to apply that going forward. And so maybe when you paint, maybe that's something to think about. There's quite a bit of stuff on these models that didn't get the kind of attention, the kind of paint coverage that it should have, but it almost doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm done gushing with these about these models. I don't know if you have these. I don't know if you've thought about getting these. But if you like Astra Militarum, if you just like cool-looking plastic toys that you get to paint, I think this is a wonderful kit to get. Now, these are from the Kill Team Octarius box, which has got a kind of a price tag to it. But I think these are also available individually now. So, you know, you got a couple of bucks in your pocket. You have some space in your case to get another squad of 10 dudes that look awesome. Honestly, I highly recommend these guys. They were a blast to do. I hope you enjoyed watching this at least half as much as I enjoyed doing this. Have a wonderful afternoon. Be nice to yourselves and each other. Peace.